Hello everyone, welcome to this third lecture of week 2. Today we will be discussing about data collection context and attitude versus behavior. So we will understand the four contexts of data collection: natural, lab-based, decontextualized and limited product use. We will also distinguish between attitudinal data and behavioral data. So attitudinal data, which is what people say, and behavioral data, what people do. We will recognize the implications of these collection contexts on data validity and ecological relevance. Then we will select the appropriate data types and collection context based on our research objectives. So, starting with data collection context. So, when I am trying to do my data collection in the natural environment of the user, we are observing the users in their real environment with high ecological validity. We call it as natural context. By ecological validity, what I mean is, if you are trying to observe me, how do I use my washing machine in a lab environment, what you are ignoring the fact is I might have some toddlers who are also trying to do something to the washing machine along with me, trying to press something. When I have closed the lid and started the process, they might be trying to open the lid. So, my ecological validity is not possible in case I am trying to observe all these things in a lab environment. When I try to do this in the natural context, which is a real usage scenario, I will be able to capture all of these things. And when I capture this, I know that, oh, okay, I have to have a feature which is child lock facility. If I have a heating water cycle or if I have a heat based drying cycle, I will make my machine's door not be openable till the temperatures have come down to the limit that it is safe for specifically children and other people who have cognitive impairment, that they do not end up opening it and getting themselves burned. It is also important for the safety of my normal users also. Then comes the second kind of data collection, which is about lab-based data collection. Here I have a controlled setting with standardized tasks and equipment. I can also do it in a decontextualized setting. So whenever you are doing surveys or conducting an interview or you are asking people to write down a diary, you have removed them from the task context, and that is a decontextualized data collection technique. When you are using a simulation or you are going to do a limited use thing, so for example you have a prototype or a mock-up which only does one thing, then I am doing a simulated or limited use data collection context. So let's say I want to understand how children choose different toys to play with, or is it children and adults together negotiate and decide which toy to play with it. So then the best way to do this particular research would be to do it in the natural or near natural context, because in the home environment the kid is most comfortable and knows where all the toys are, knows their toys pretty well, whereas if I bring them to a lab environment with new kind of toys, my experiment is going to get damaged because there is this new toys and the child is very excited. Okay, that new toy. So they might go and select some toy just because of its novelty. They have never played with it. Whereas with their own toys, they are very used to it and they are going to select the toy not on the basis of novelty. So the data is best collected in this case when the users interact with the product in their real environment. It captures authentic behaviors, the workarounds that they have and the environmental influences that are there. So these settings can be anything, wherever the natural process happens. It can be home, it can be in a workplace, it can be also commute place, depending on what your context is. We can use many different kinds of methods. I can do ethnographic method, contextual inquiry, or I can also do diary studies. As soon as I go to diary studies, I am moving little bit away from the natural or near natural context, more towards the decontextualized context. So how you are designing this diary study determines whether it will be natural or near natural context, or it will be the decontextualized. So if you want the user to do this diary entry at the end of the day when all their tasks are over, then it becomes decontextualized. In case you want them to make this diary entry as they are going ahead with their task in their natural environment, then this process also, this particular research methodology also works for natural or near natural context. Now, taking the context of a lab-based testing. Let's say you want to understand whether a user new ECG machine that you have designed is working as desired or not, whether the person who was trying to operate it is able to get the results without making an error. Now, if you were trying to test it in the natural environment, you are bringing in lot of risk. All the noise in the natural environment and a new product are difficult to handle. In this natural environment, if you made errors of judgment because you have a new product, you might also risk the life and health of someone. So under such circumstances, it might be a best idea that you do a lab-based testing. So whenever you want to cut down on the noise or whenever you want to cut down on the risks of involved, you should better choose the lab environment. So users interact with the product in a controlled setting. You allow precise measurements, you can do eye tracking, task timing, error rate identification. So the only problem in this particular context is you have low ecological validity, because what worked in the lab context, so in the lab context when there is no noise, the person can operate, let's say, 6 different controls very nicely, but in the same noisy environment, those 6 controls might become too much of a cognitive load. The methods that you use in this particular context are usability testing. You can also use think aloud protocols. You can also conduct controlled experiments where you decide what you want to measure, how you want to measure, and you can test between this stimuli is given and the other stimuli is not given. Now coming to this decontextualized collection. So whenever you want to reach out to a large number of people, you have to conduct something like a survey. Even when you want to conduct an interview, and if the person is not performing the task but just reflecting on their idea of performing the task at some point of time, you have decontextualized the whole system. So that data is gathered outside of a use context. So I can also conduct interview, which I call more as contextual inquiry, when somebody is performing the task. Then it is in the natural environment. Decontextualized collection, however, the person is not supposed to do the task but reflect on their experience of doing the task, or you might have other questions also, just that the use context is eliminated. It relies on self-reported attitudes, preferences, and recalled behavior. It is quite cost effective and it is scalable to larger samples. I can use surveys and questionnaires to achieve this. I can also do interviews and I can also do focus group discussion where 6 to 10 people can be brought in and they can discuss on the topics and I can note down all the observations. Then comes limited use or simulation. So let's say I am interested in understanding how this dashboard is performing. So I'm not interested in the entire car, and if I had put this user in this car and tried to conduct the experiment, then I would not have gotten all the data that I wanted about the dashboard only, because then this person would have been thinking about operating the brakes, the clutch, the accelerator, or this person might be thinking about driving all together safely on the roads. So in all such contexts where my focus is that the user should be focused on the particular area only and not anything else, I can use a simulation based testing where I have simulated this particular dashboard and I am trying to test it. I might also simulate the brake and the clutch. It depends all on your kind of experimental objective that you have. I can also have a head mounted gear so that I can also simulate the road. The user knows that they are safe. It is not an actual road, but still there is this feeling of the road and then this dashboard. You can also do this kind of experiments in case you have just the prototype ready. So I have prototype only certain features into it and I am still testing it. So it is useful for testing concepts before full development, and it reduces the cost of iteration right from very early design stages. So I used certain methods called Wizard of Oz testing. So in Wizard of Oz testing, you don't have the system actually working. So let's say I have an interface and I say that I want to press the OK button. So someone else will now bring in the next screen which has the next set of actions. If I had not pressed OK but I had pressed cancel, then this person will bring in the next. So it is basically a simulation of what they would have expected in actual scenario. You can also build some paper prototypes. So I want to understand the spatial configuration, or I want to understand whether people like this particular form or not, and I can create paper prototypes. I can also do A/B testing, so where I have two or more than two variations of the same product, and I can test these products, the features that I am interested in. So all these contexts are valid contexts for doing a user testing, and you can test your same product, let's say washing machine, all the four contexts depending on what your objective is, depending on what design stage you are. However, you have to be always aware of what are the relative strengths and what are the trade-offs that you are making whenever you select a particular way of doing this test. So let's say I am taking the natural context. When I am in natural context, I am able to get very rich ecological validity, which means the person is operating in the environment, and I get to get all the information about the noise, the disturbances, the problems, the pros and cons of having this actual environment in there. So it gives you very rich data on ecological validity, and it is good whenever you want to make design decisions related to what additional features should it have. Should it have a child lock, or it does not need a child lock? What kind of child lock will function? What is the age group for this child lock along which it is valid? How this person knows that this child lock is there? However, there is a big trade-off that you are also making when you make this choice. There is very less variable control. Now, the person who is trying to operate this washing machine might just suddenly get a phone call in the natural environment and might have to go to attend that particular phone call. By the time they have attended the phone call, if they would have done half of the processes on keying the buttons and they come back, either the machine still remembers that, or the machine has just gone into standby mode and they have to start back again. Since there are a lot of other members in the family, let's say some kids come and create some kind of disturbances which might increase cognitive load for your user. So rather than the interface being the problem, the person might be making more errors because of the increased cognitive load. Now let's go to the next testing method, which is the lab-based testing. Here, maximum measurement precision is possible. So if I want to understand how much time does it take for me to, I will first press the start button, then I will go and select the program that I want, which is white clothes. Then my next aspect is how much water do I want. Let's say I want high level of water because I have a lot of clothes. Then I might want to select whether I want to go for the drying cycle or not. And then I might want to say finally that, okay, start the process. So how does this entire time frame, how much time does it take? How often people are making errors? How much time they have to think in order to make the right kind of choice? If you want to do these exact measurements, then a lab-based testing is the best option to go ahead with, because it will give you maximum measurement precision. However, there will be very low ecological validity. So if somebody is able to finish this whole task error-free in a lab environment, does not really mean they will be able to do it in their home environment also, because in the home environment they might get disrupted, and as a result they might end up pressing some wrong button. Let's say I pressed my option as high level of water, and suddenly a kid comes and changes that setting, and I'm not able to recognize that the setting change has happened because there were no LED lights. Then I do not know how to recover from that particular situation. Where did this kid come and put my machine in? So only when you had done it in the natural context, you would know that, okay, I need to have a indicator light which says at what level my water has gotten set up. And then even if an error is there, users are able to, in the real environment, recover from the error. Coming to decontextualized context. This is a very scalable way of doing research, because I can take this research to thousands of people. I don't have to recreate the context every time I am trying to do this research. So its biggest advantage is its scalability. However, the biggest disadvantage that it has is it is a self-report only, and you do not know how the actual behavior was. Let's say I asked people, what kind of instruments do you use for eating your food? So they might think that, okay, I most often use spoon and a knife to have my food. However, at that point of time, they are only thinking of certain kind of food items. Now, let's say they have not thought about how do they eat pizza or how do they eat roti, and in that particular context, they might be using their hands. So, there is a problem with this self-reported behavior. They are reflecting, they are trying to think back what do they do, and they are reporting some of it. The reporting can be deliberately incomplete, and it can be also not deliberate action. I might do this deliberate action because I want to project certain kind of an image. I might also not do it deliberately because I just forgot that okay, I also eat pizza and roti. Then comes the last context, which is the limited use context, where we are creating a simulation or a prototype and testing it. The best advantage of this particular method is in the formative evaluation process. So during the entire design process, I can keep doing this prototype simulation based testing, and I can identify the problems early on and bring in design modifications. However, the biggest drawback is it is a simulation and there is no real use case. I am not thinking of all the other things which are going on. So let's say I just have a simulated dashboard, and all the other actions like braking or the traffic movement, they are all not real. So there is very little use of this data as compared to what the natural context is. However, it helps you in quickly identifying a lot of design challenges. So whenever you are trying to take a decision on what kind of context you should select for your user research, you need to look into the advantages as well as trade-offs of all of them. And the best user research should actually involve all of these contexts, and do certain research in one context, another set with another context, and if different design phases you do different kinds of user testing contexts. So we should match the context to the research question also. What type of research question are you asking? Let's say I have an exploratory research question where I want to understand real behavior of people in authentic settings. So I want to understand how people eat their food, what are the different kinds of instruments they use. So it will be a good idea that I do this experiment, do this user research in natural settings. So I can go to restaurants which serve lots of different kinds of food, and I can do this research. I can also visit homes of people. In that case, I will have to visit them multiple times because they will be then having different kinds of food, and maybe they will be using different kinds of instruments. I can also rather go and do this research as an observational research in their kitchen and look at all the tools that they use for eating their food. Let's say I am in the evaluative phase where I have designed something and I want to measure the performance with controlled variables. I am designing a new kind of spoon which is helpful for people with arthritis to eat their food without much difficulty. So in that particular context, I might think of getting some of my users and bringing in them to this lab environment where they are devoid of other distractions, plus the fact that somebody might be judging them because they are eating with this different kind of an instrument, and I can conduct the evaluative research, understand from them what can I do further, or whether they like the product, whether they will accept the product or not. I might have to also do an attitudinal research. So I want to capture their opinions, their preferences at a particular scale. So in that particular context, I can do a decontextualized research, like how surveys are conducted. I want to understand their current comfort level with using the spoons they have in their house, their current comfort level with the so many options that are available on their washing machine panel, their current comfort level with using AI interfaces, voice-based search mechanism. I can also have the formative phase where I am trying to use this limited use simulation based or prototype based things. So here the main reason why I am trying to do is right from day one of my design project, I am trying to test whether my concepts are working or not till the full deployment of the product. Now coming to attitude versus behavior in practice. Let's say somebody says I live a healthy lifestyle. So they said that I live a healthy lifestyle. Now you need to figure out whether they really live a healthy lifestyle. So if you see them cycling to work, cycling to go and buy something from the market, or cycling as daily way of exercise, then you can say that yes, there is a match between the attitude and the behavior. However, if they said I like a healthy lifestyle, which is a depiction of their attitude by them themselves reporting it, but you observe them eating junk food all day, then so the behavior part of it, then you can say that the behavior does not match with the attitude that they are trying to put forth. So attitude is what people say and behavior is what they actually do. And for any user research, we need to study both of them. So when you are trying to understand attitude, we are mostly doing qualitative research because we are trying to collect this subjective data focused on their perceptions, their opinions, their feelings, preferences and self-reported experiences. When I am trying to do behavioral study, I am trying to collect objective data focused on their actual usage patterns, their interaction difficulties and their observable actions. So the key insight that I am trying to gather is the gap between attitude and behavior is one of the key things. So some researchers were trying to conduct an experiment wherein they try to see whether people who say that they are very gender neutral in terms of their attitude are actually gender neutral when it comes to behavior or not. So this particular research was being conducted in Scandinavian country. And Scandinavians are usually pretty gender neutral. However, our biases might be also at a subconscious level. So what the researchers did in this particular case was very interesting. They got in toddlers and they put the female toddlers into male clothes and the male toddlers into female clothes. Then they asked these volunteers, the room was full of toys, and asked them, will you come and help this child and play with this child? And it was observed that all of them subconsciously picked up so-called girl toys like dolls and kitchen sets when they saw that the child was dressed up like a girl, and when they saw that the child was dressed up like a boy, they picked up toys like cycles, cars and so on. When they came out of this experiment and they were told that you have this subconscious level bias wherein you try to give gender stereotype toys thinking that the child belongs to a certain gender. So what they were able to tap in through this research was, so all the participants were also surprised because they thought they were pretty gender neutral, but they realized that there is a subconscious bias that they still had, and they decided that we'll be more consciously concerned when we are trying to select toys for children. So that's why we try to study both attitudinal and behavioral data, because people might be consciously doing manipulation or they might be subconsciously doing a manipulation. So when we are trying to capture this attitudinal data, we are trying to do subjective self-reports. So we will capture their perceptions. So I will have these kind of examples like, I find this app easy to use. So your user said, I prefer dark mode over light mode. I would recommend this product. I like a healthy lifestyle. So these are how your attitudinal data when collected looks like. So the strengths over here is it accesses internal states, how people get satisfied, what they trust, what they desire, and you can scale them via different kinds of survey techniques. You can also collect them quite quickly. However, the limitation is we are mostly using a Likert scale. A Likert scale is something like you rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 means that you are very satisfied and 1 means you are very unsatisfied. So anything of that sort you will put on the two extremes of the scale and you will ask people to rate. Now what is the problem? My 5 is not the same as your 5. My difference between 4 and 5 is not the same as your difference between 4 and 5. So you have to really have a large number of people responding it for this data to be reliable, because just imagine you have 10 respondents, out of which 3 said that I am rating it 5. So your score over there is 15. 3 people said I am rating it at 1. I am dissatisfied with it. So your score over there is 3. And the rest 4 people said that I am neutral. So I am at 3. So that is a score of 12. Now if I try to add this score up and divide it by 10 people, where do I reach? 15 plus 15, 30. So I reach a neutral value of 3 as per this. So for me, the meaning out of this 10 user research is that neither people are satisfied with it nor people are dissatisfied with it. But my actual data did not say like that. I had some people who said neither satisfied nor unsatisfied, but I have my rest of the data on extremes. So it is something like how either I'm an Apple person or I am a Windows person. So it was a context of that kind. So this is happening because I create different meanings out of what 5 means for me and what 1 means for me, and it is not the same across people. You can have open-ended interview questions to get more details about it. However, in a survey, it is not possible to do that. You can also have some focus group discussions followed by this in order to do away with this limitation. You can also use some existing questionnaires like the NPS and the SUS and try to expand your population with which you are doing this user research to get good data over here. Now coming to the behavioral data, what people do. So over here, if you are getting an information that users click black 5 times before finding the checkout button. Average task completion time was 45 seconds. 62% of users abandoned the form at the address field. Users skipped the tutorial entirely. So this is what I am identifying about behavior of people. So the strength over here is it is not subject to recall behavior, recall bias. They are doing it and you are recording it. So it reveals actual pain points, provides quantitative performance metrics. So the common collection methods over here are usability testing, analytics and clickstream data. You can use eye tracking and heat maps, A/B testing, contextual observation or screen recording. The key limitations are that it is very good for how users actually interact with the product and where breakdown occurs. However, because it requires you to monitor these users so directly, the number of such tests that you can conduct is limited. However, you can employ in analytics where automatic data collection is happening and you can recover from this particular limitation wherever it is possible to do it. So our main idea over here is I want to understand this attitude behavior gap and design accordingly. So users often will say, I always read the privacy policy, but when you are trying to collect the data of how fast they scroll through it, you will know how often they read it. They might say, I prefer healthy food, but when you collect their purchase data of what kind of food they collect, what buy or what kind of snacks they buy, you will really know whether the attitude and the behavior are going hand in hand. They might say this interface is intuitive, but the task completion rate is only 43%, and then you know where you have to make changes in your design. So the implications for the research design are never solely rely on only one of them, like the self-reported data. Triangulate, so pair the surveys with observations. Use behavioral data to validate any claims that your user might be doing. So we have already discussed about this in one of our previous lectures. So if you are looking at the map, I will put my behavioral on the y-axis and attitudinal on the y-axis, qualitative versus quantitative on the x-axis, and there are different methods which can go into each one of these quadrants, and I select my method accordingly. So the key takeaways from this particular lecture is the context matters. Data collection context can be natural, lab, decontextualized or limited use. Determine how much ecological validity do you need and how much control you need, in which phase of the design you are to decide which method you will be using. Also look whether you want to collect attitude or behavior. Attitude is self-reported, so do not trust onto it. As far as possible, try to collect both of them. So mind this gap, the attitude behavior gap. It might be conscious or subconscious that people are creating this gap. So the method selection depends on all these parameters. These are some of the references for further reading for anybody who is interested in it. Thank you so much. See you in the next lecture.